Jeff Peterson from Heartland Farm Partners joined me at the desk to talk policy, trade, and what challenges were faced this year.
You know what, I think, Troy, 2018 was definitely one of the most challenging years I've seen. I got started in the grain industry going back in 1992. And what we've seen this year is because of margins are tight. And depending on where you sold, you either made a little bit of money or you lost money, and lost quite a bit of money in soybeans. The other thing we're seeing is working capital is tight among farmers, and that really changes the way that they have to look at the markets and how much risk they can take. In addition to that, though, the government policy coming into play, and especially around the trade area, probably took a bigger role in the price of the prices than what we've seen going all the way back from the time I've been in business. So it definitely was a very challenging year, I'd say, in 2018.
Yeah, and you mentioned the trade issues just now. Has it been in the news a lot more lately, or does it seem that way? What do you think?
Seems like that's all we talk about, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think as I look back, if you think about it, going all the way back to when Trump was talked about running for office, he was talking about trade. And then when he gets elected, then he continues to bring that to the forefront and talks about trade. But if you think about it, the renegotiation of NAFTA actually started in August of 2017. So we spent a fair amount of time going through and talking about that the first part of the year. And then also the first part of the year, we ended up having the discussion about, first of all, about solar panels, and then on washing machines. And then from there it transitioned into steel and aluminum. And that's when we got to that point in March, and that's when kind of the heat came up in regard to China and the US. And really ever since that point, there's been that back and forth discussion with China on trade and bringing tariffs on, taking them away. The markets go up, the markets go down. So we're most definitely seeing probably one of the highest amount of impact on trade in those discussions that I've ever seen in the markets.
Do you think prices played out this year like had been forecast?
You know, that's as I took back, and every year we like to use this time of year to evaluate what's going on. And I look back and think about some of the talks I was given in December of last year, and actually my first answer to that would have to be no, they didn't. And actually what we have there is that early on we were looking for the nearby corn futures to get up to about $3.80. We were looking for the December 2018 futures to get up to about $4.05. But what changed is demand actually in the first part of the year increased, and as a result of that, prices actually went a little higher than what people thought. And as a matter of fact, on the old crop we got all the way up to $4.12 on corn, and on new crop got up over $4.29, so it overshot our targets. But what happened is that when the May report came out, the demand was stronger, our amount of ending stocks were lower, but what it did, it set the table what looked like an opportunity to see prices even go higher.
Gotcha. So do you think there's anything producers or people in the industry learned this year that's going to be helpful in the future?
I think this year is full of lessons, a lot of great lessons, because depending on when you sold this year, depends on whether you made money or lost money, depends on whether it's going to be a great conversation with your lender or really a hard one. So I think the first thing that we learned is the fact we really have to look at our break-evens. And we can't be afraid to go ahead and sell when we have prices above break-evens, because even as low as prices are right now for soybeans, there was a point in time we could have been selling at a profit. We also have to expect the unexpected. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but ultimately there's going to be things that's going to impact our market now and going forward that we haven't even thought about or talked about. So we have to be prepared to look at those conditions often and really study those. And what that really means is that we have to have a marketing plan that has flexibility. And what the flexibility looks like is the ability to go ahead and make sales, the confidence to be able to make those sales, but to know that if conditions change down the road, you either know how you're going to defend those sales or you know what actions you're going to take to still try to be able to get better prices.
All right, so let's have you get your crystal ball out. What do you see as the top stories people are going to be talking about in 2019?
Yeah, 2019, I think it's going to be a really interesting year. I think we've got really kind of the tale of two crops, so let's start off there first. We've got a corn crop that actually has a fairly favorable outlook on price. Even though we saw USDA in their last report that came out talk about much bigger stocks in the world, I think we still have some favorable prices overall there. But then we flip the coin and we look at soybeans, and everybody's going, how am I going to make money in soybeans?
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of talk about that. I think there's also going to be a lot of discussion about acres. What are acres going to do? Are we going to see more acres? Are we going to see less acres in corn? What's going to switch? Or what's wheat acres going to do? And our calculations actually would say that we probably need to see about 4 million acres swing over to corn from soybeans just to go ahead and kind of keep our ending stocks comparable. I think we'll see more acres than that. I think we'll hear the market talking about 6 or 7 million acres switching over into the corn side. I think the other thing there's going to be a lot of discussion about is the trade situation with China. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. I think we're going to continue to have talk about that. I think as a result of that, we're going to continue to talk about the different markets that we are selling our soybeans into, and ultimately whether it's surprisingly, think about this, so far this year, from September through November, the biggest buyer's been Argentina, which is typically one of our biggest competitors. So as we look into 2019, it's going to be the markets that we're selling to, the names that we weren't used to. It's also going to be a little bit of realization of demand, meaning on soybeans, early on there was a forecast of who's going to be a buyer of our beans. Now we're going to have to see if we're anywhere near close on the export side, if that's going to be able to be realized. Over on the energy side, with the big pullback we've seen on energy, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about ethanol. And I think the discussion on ethanol is going to be around what about E15? Are we going to move forward with that? What about these waivers that we've got on the mandated requirements? Are we going to be able to do something with that to be able to have more demand? So I think it's going to be an exciting 2019, Troy.